All right, you opened your home to this woman during what you called a crisis, and now you're standing here telling me $3,000 just walked out the door?
Yes, ma'am, and it wasn't just the money.
We'll get to the wasn't just. How long did she live with you?
About 4 months, ma'am.
And when did you find out she was sleeping with your fiancé?
2 weeks before my wedding.
2 weeks before your wedding.
Ma'am, that is not what...
I didn't ask you yet. Stand still. Miss Fontaine, how did you and the defendant know each other before she moved in? Give me the short version.
We were best friends for 6 years, ma'am. We met at work. She was my maid of honor. She lost her apartment in February, and I told her she could stay with us until she got back on her feet.
She was your maid of honor, the woman standing across from you right now, your maid of honor.
Yes, ma'am.
And us means you and your fiancé. What's his name?
Marcus, ma'am. Marcus Webb. We were together 4 years.
Was past tense.
Yes, ma'am. We called it off after everything came out.
All right. Let me ask the defendant. Miss Caldwell, you moved into your best friend's home, the woman who took you in when you had nowhere to go, and you're going to stand there and tell me that nothing inappropriate happened with her fiancé. Go.
Ma'am, Desiree has twisted this whole situation. Marcus and I talked, yes. We spent time together in the apartment, but I was living there. That's natural. Desiree was working double shifts at the hospital, and she was barely home. Marcus and I we were both lonely, and we talked.
Talked. You're going to use the word talked.
It was mostly talking, ma'am.
Mostly. That is a fascinating word to choose.
Ma'am, if I can...
In a moment. Miss Caldwell, you were her maid of honor. You were planning her wedding with her?
Yes, ma'am. I helped with everything. The venue deposit, the flowers, the bachelorette.
While also talking to the groom.
Ma'am, the wedding planning and what happened with Marcus were two completely separate things.
In what universe? You are standing in this woman's apartment. She is paying your groceries. She is paying the electric bill with you in the house. And you are spending intimate time with the man she is about to marry. Those things are not separate. That is one catastrophic thing.
I understand how it looks, ma'am. I do. But Desiree wasn't present, not emotionally. She was exhausted, she was distant, and Marcus was unhappy. I didn't plan for anything to happen.
Things that just happen usually start with a choice. Let's move on. Tell me about the $3,000. Miss Fontaine, break it down for me.
Ma'am, the $3,000 is made up of a few things. First, I had set aside $1,200 in a shared household fund, cash in an envelope in the kitchen drawer. That was for the wedding caterer's second installment. When Brianna left, that money was gone. Second, I had been giving her $250 a month toward household expenses. She was supposed to be saving her own money to get back on her feet, but she never contributed a dime. For 4 months, that's $1,000 I gave her on top of covering everything. And then there's the $750 I paid to change my wedding venue deposit because I had to cancel the original booking after all of this fell apart.
So the $1,200, the $1,000 in monthly contributions, and the $750 from the venue change, that adds up to your $3,000.
Exactly, ma'am.
Miss Caldwell, the $1,200 in the envelope, what do you say about that?
I didn't take $1,200, ma'am. I took money from the kitchen, yes, but it was $200. And Desiree had told me at the beginning of my stay that if I ever needed anything, I should just take from the envelope, that it was there for household needs. I had run out of toiletries and I needed to refill my prescription. I was going to replace it.
You were going to replace it?
Yes, ma'am.
And then what happened? You forgot or you left?
I left the apartment, ma'am. Desiree asked me to leave. There wasn't time to sort out finances.
She asked you to leave, gently put, after finding out you'd been with her fiancé, and you didn't think on your way out the door to put the $200 back?
Ma'am, everything happened so fast. She was screaming. I was scared. I just grabbed my things and left.
Let me ask you something, and I want you to think about it carefully. Why would Desiree give you open access to an envelope that had money set aside for a wedding caterer? That's not grocery money. That's not a communal snack fund.
She never told me what the money was specifically for, ma'am. She just said, if you need anything, there's an envelope in the kitchen.
That is not true.
Miss Fontaine, I'll get to you. Did you ever tell her directly what that money was for?
Ma'am, I told her when I put it in there. I said, this is for the caterer and do not touch it. She was standing right there.
And you said, do not touch it.
Word for word, ma'am.
Miss Caldwell, you were told not to touch it and you took from it anyway.
Ma'am, I truly do not remember her saying that. I would not have touched it if I thought it was off limits. I'm not a thief.
You took money from an envelope in someone else's home that didn't belong to you, and whether or not you remember being told, you didn't ask first, correct?
Correct, ma'am. I didn't ask.
And you never put it back?
No, ma'am, I didn't.
All right. Now, the monthly contributions. Miss Caldwell, were you told when you moved in that you would be expected to pay anything?
Desiree told me to contribute what I could when I got back on my feet, ma'am. That was the arrangement. Not a fixed amount, not every month. When I could. And I did contribute. I bought groceries several times. I cooked, I cleaned, I helped run errands for the wedding. I was contributing in other ways.
Groceries?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Fontaine, was there an agreed-upon dollar amount for monthly contributions?
Yes, ma'am. We agreed on $250 a month. I even said I'd knock it down to $200 because of her situation, but she never paid a single dollar in 4 months. I never pushed it because I didn't want to stress her out. She was supposedly in crisis, and I thought she'd make it right when she got stable. She never did.
Miss Caldwell, did you agree to $250 a month?
Ma'am, we talked about an amount like that, but it was never firm. It was more like a rough idea. The actual agreement was, when you can. She never asked me for it directly, not once.
Because she was being a good friend. She was giving you space. That's not a license to pay nothing. If someone says, here's the number we discussed, and you move into their home, you don't get to later redefine the agreement as optional just because they were too polite to knock on your door every month.
I understand that, ma'am, but I didn't have it.
You didn't have it or you didn't prioritize it?
Ma'am, I was between jobs for most of it.
How long were you between jobs?
About 2.5 months.
And the other month and a half?
I was working part-time, ma'am. I was trying to save up to get my own place again.
Saving to get your own place while living rent-free in hers.
When you put it that way.
That is the way it is. All right, let's bring in the witness. I understand there was someone present on the night everything came out. Ma'am, step forward.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you know the plaintiff?
We're co-workers, ma'am. We've worked together at the hospital for about 3 years. Desiree and I are close.
So you're her friend. Let's be clear about that so we know your perspective walking in. Were you present at the apartment on the night Desiree confronted the defendant?
Yes, ma'am. Desiree called me upset and I came over within about 20 minutes. By the time I got there, Brianna was already in the living room with her bags. Desiree was in the bedroom. She was crying. I saw the kitchen drawer open and the envelope on the counter. It was empty.
You saw the envelope. It was empty when you arrived.
Yes, ma'am, completely empty.
Did Brianna say anything to you or to Desiree when you were there?
She said she needed some of that money for her prescriptions and that she was going to pay it back. She said that directly. Something like, I only took what I needed, I'll handle it. She didn't say $200. She didn't give a number.
She didn't say, I only took $200. She just said what I needed.
Correct, ma'am.
Miss Caldwell, do you dispute that?
I don't remember exactly what I said, ma'am. I was very emotional. I know I said I would handle it. I stand by that it was $200 I took.
You stand by a number that you also claim you didn't know was off limits, that you can't precisely recall taking, and that you've never paid back. That's a lot of standing by a very shaky $200.
Ma'am, I know how this looks. I do. But I'm not lying about the amount.
Were you drinking that night?
A little, ma'am. Marcus and I had had some wine earlier.
Of course you had. Back to you, Miss Elkins. One more question. Did you see Marcus Webb that night?
No, ma'am. He had already left. From what Desiree told me, he left shortly before she called me. He didn't come back that night.
He didn't come back? And you haven't seen him since, Miss Fontaine?
I saw him once to return his things, ma'am. We haven't spoken since.
All right, Miss Elkins, you may step back. I'm done with you.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Miss Caldwell, I want to go back to something. You said Desiree was distant, she was exhausted, she wasn't emotionally present. You said Marcus was unhappy. I want to understand the timeline. When did you first feel like there was something between you and Marcus that was more than friendship?
Ma'am, I don't want to put a date on it because I'm not sure when it shifted. But maybe 6 or 7 weeks into my stay, we started having deeper conversations when Desiree was at work late. He was venting about feeling alone. I was going through my own things. It became something I didn't plan for.
6 or 7 weeks in. So within 2 months of moving into her home, you were developing feelings for her fiancé.
I wouldn't describe it exactly as feelings at that point, ma'am.
What would you describe it as?
Connection, I suppose. Comfort.
And at any point during those weeks, while you were finding comfort with her fiancé in her apartment, did you step back and say to yourself, this woman took me in, she is planning her wedding, and I need to stop this right now?
Ma'am, I told myself that many times. But when you're in it, when you're going through a hard time and someone is right there and kind to you, it's very easy to let the lines blur. I am not proud of this.
The lines blur. That phrase bothers me every time someone uses it in this courtroom because lines don't blur on their own. You blur them. You make the choice to stand a little closer, to stay up a little later, to not leave the room when you should. The line was always exactly where it was. You just decided you didn't want to see it.
You're right, ma'am. I own that.
Did you continue helping plan the wedding while this was happening?
Yes, ma'am.
You were helping pick centerpieces and writing your maid of honor speech while sleeping with the groom.
Ma'am, it was only twice. It wasn't an ongoing.
Twice is enough times to know it was wrong before the second time. Let's be very honest about that.
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Fontaine, the venue deposit change. You said you lost $750 because you had to cancel and rebook. Tell me how that connects to this situation specifically.
Ma'am, the original venue was connected to a very specific memory for Marcus and me. It was where we got engaged. After everything that happened, I couldn't go through with being married there. Being in that place where everything started for us and knowing what he had done, I just couldn't do it. So I canceled the booking. The venue kept the deposit because I was past the cancellation window. I lost $750 because of what she did in my home.
That's a real loss, but it's connected to Marcus as much as it is to her.
Ma'am, Marcus didn't invite himself into an affair. She was living under my roof. She had access to my life, my home, my relationship, and my trust in ways that a stranger never would have had. If she hadn't been there, this doesn't happen.
Miss Caldwell, do you believe you should be responsible for the venue deposit loss?
Ma'am, I feel terrible about it, but I think that's a decision Desiree made out of emotion, and I don't believe I should bear the financial cost of a choice she made about her wedding. She could have kept the venue. She chose not to.
She could have kept the venue where her fiancé had already emotionally abandoned her for her best friend. That's your argument.
Ma'am, I understand it sounds cold. I'm just saying I didn't make that specific financial decision.
You made every decision that led to it. You don't get to walk away from the consequences because the final step was hers to take.
Exactly, ma'am. Thank you.
Don't thank me yet. I'm still thinking. Now, Miss Fontaine, I want to ask you something honestly. When Brianna moved in, did you have any suspicion at all? Any moment where something felt off?
Ma'am, looking back, there were small things. She and Marcus would laugh together about inside jokes I wasn't part of. Sometimes I'd come home and they'd both be in the living room and the TV wasn't on and it would just go quiet. But I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself she was my best friend and Marcus loved me and I was overworked and imagining things. I trusted her completely.
And those moments, you dismissed them.
I did, ma'am, because she was my maid of honor. Who suspects that?
I understand. Let me ask the defendant one final thing. If the roles were reversed, if you had taken in Desiree during a crisis, planned a wedding with her, and she had turned around and done what you did, what would you be suing her for?
Ma'am, I don't know how to answer that.
I think you do. You just don't want to say it out loud because you know the answer is everything.
I would be devastated, ma'am. I know that.
And yet you're standing here splitting hairs over $100 here and a deposit there as if the arithmetic is the problem. The problem is what you did with those 4 months. The money is just what's left of it in a courtroom.
I understand, ma'am, and I am genuinely sorry to Desiree. I have wanted to tell her that.
Ma'am, I don't need her apology. I need what I lost back.
Then let's give it to you. Here is my ruling. On the $1,200 from the envelope, I find in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant admitted she took from it without asking. She was told explicitly it was not to be touched. Her claimed amount of $200 is inconsistent with the testimony of the witness, who heard no specific number given at the time. I am not going to reward vague memory as a discount. The full $1,200 is awarded. On the monthly contributions, the plaintiff agreed to take a reduced amount of $200 per month as an act of generosity during a friendship. The defendant lived rent-free for 4 months, contributed nothing in cash, and used the looseness of the arrangement to avoid all financial accountability. I am awarding the plaintiff $800, representing 4 months at $200 per month, which is what the plaintiff herself offered as a reduced rate. Generosity does not mean free. On the venue deposit, this is the closest question. The defendant did not write the cancellation check, but I am satisfied that the emotional impossibility of using that venue was a direct and foreseeable result of what the defendant chose to do in that apartment, awarding the plaintiff $500 toward that loss. The remaining $250 reflects that Marcus was equally responsible for that decision, and he is not standing in front of me. Total judgment for the plaintiff, $2,500.
Thank you, ma'am.
Don't thank me. Save that energy for building something better than what she helped burn down. We're done.